Ah.
You sneaked up on me there, Justin.
I did. I was trying to sneak up on people to see who would click in first. That's what I'm at tonight. It's one of those nights. I mean, people know what it's about because it's in the description, but it's a wee bit of a special night tonight again, isn't it?
Yeah, well, every night's a special night when we get to spend it with the people watching the show. But yeah, there's a couple of very interesting things. It's really it's about two old and new things. Two things from the past being revived again, and two totally different things. But yeah, they're cool.
I should have called it the old and the new and the new and the old. I should have.
Doctor Who does whiskey. Oh no, copyright the BBC. We're not allowed to do
that. Or maybe Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. Back to the Future.
I'll be more worried about Sony Entertainment chasing me down in the BBC.
Well, put it like this: it's not as long as we're not infringing on anything to do with Disney. Okay, Disney. We're not touching anything to do with Unusable. Otherwise, we end up losing everything we've ever earned, or everything my kids are going to earn.
Right, there you go. Mark Kerr wasn't first tonight. I'm disappointed.
Oh, I see James is in. James, we've been monitoring on Twitter. James has got his stills delivered, but they accidentally banged one of them and they have to send it back before size to get it ironed out. You can get it fixed up again. But James, keep going. Big week for you this week. Congratulations, mate. Well done.
It's good.
Well done.
We're getting called the Whiskey Brothers. Is that not somebody else? Is that not somebody else's show name? I think it is. Maybe don't be calling us that, Johan.
No, I don't know. There probably is.
Michael Matthews saying hello. Eric van de Ende is saying hello. Good. Bonsoir from Belgium. Yeah. Bonsoir. Patrick Multy saying hello. William saying hello. Good evening to you, William, as well. Graham Horner would like to see new names. Graham Horner saying hello. Evening, gents. Remember to comment, like, and share. Tell your friends. Tag us. You name it. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We're on I can't even remember the name of the thing. Instagram. No. We're live on YouTube as well. It's always good if you're watching the show on Facebook and you normally watch it on Facebook. Flick over to YouTube, Irish Whiskey Review. If you haven't already, hit subscribe there as well. And it always helps. Loads and loads of people watching tonight. Did we start early tonight? I think we maybe did. I maybe clicked it so as we started it exactly at 10 rather than clicking it at 10 and then we're on by 10:05. There is a delay, by the way. It takes 2 or 3 minutes to get round the world. Yeah. It just doesn't go exactly like satellite. But a lot of people watching tonight. A lot of people to watch tonight. Jarlath is watching. Oh. If you're watching it, you could have done it live tonight, Jarlath. You could have done it live.
One of the stars. No, I treated Justin to lunch today as well, didn't I, Justin? We went to Steady Eddie's in Larne.
It was fabulous.
Oh, it's awesome. Awesome stuff. Just to give him a wee plug. Great.
And he's actually doing the gourmet nights a bit the same as Slemish Supper Club, isn't he, as well? He's doing lovely gourmet nights.
He's doing tomahawk steaks and all. Sous vide cooked tomahawk steaks, seared after it. Yes. Yeah, well, hey, get one of them, Justin. Hey, get one of them, boy.
I have to laugh. James Murray Doherty saying you couldn't make it up.
And guys, anybody watching this, go on and follow the Sleeve League Distillery progress in building their stills and getting or building the distillery and how it's all been proceeding and going forward, and the new stills being delivered, and it showed you coming down the wee narrow tracks today this week, and so then they said that they dinged one of them and asked to go back. It's gone.
All right, we won't put it up because we don't want to rub it in or anything like that.
No. But he's doing it. He's showing everybody that how the progress, and you can watch it on the website and everything.
I wasn't actually going to mention it because it isn't in the news this week, but
no,
because I'd seen it and I thought, oh boy, what a pity.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's all going to go well. It's all going to go well.
Yeah. I think looked very good too. I don't know where you're talking about the stills or my lunch. Recommend that place in Lauren, William. Excellent. Now, shall I hit the button? So because we've got an awful lot to fit in tonight, I'll hit the
music. Hit the music.
Play the music.
Here we go. The show. We can nearly stop after this.
All right. Okay.
Love it. Love it. That's the highlight of the show for me, I swear. Honestly.
I showed you dancing in your seat this week. You're making us look like the grumpy old man in the Muppets.
Stadler and Waldorf. No, nothing wrong with them. Nothing wrong with any of that. Oh, brilliant. Hi. This week in the whiskey news. Now, the Irish Whiskey Association has produced sales figures for last year. And as you can imagine, the travel retail sector saw a bit of a dip. No big shock there. It dropped by 96.2%. Yeah. But overall sales remained stable, which is surprising in some ways. They were only down by 0.4%, down to 11.4 million cases, compared to 11.9 million in 2019. Now, in 2019, travel retail sales were around 700,000 cases and growing. So the future looks really good, because if you had added those travel retail sales, say they're even just stable, you're talking that you've topped over the 12 million cases mark, or what should have been over the 12 million cases mark, and who knows. Now, different sectors saw different sales go up. For example, the UK had an increase of 13.5% on Irish whiskey. Other regions that saw an increase was Germany, Poland, Sweden, Ukraine, Nigeria, and of course, as we've heard before, Russia. Irish whiskey sales in Russia are beginning to soar. Now, overall, that Jameson is
no surprise there then, Marty.
No, and when you read the stats on it, it's just overall sales. Jameson is still by far the biggest, with 7.6 million cases. Right, so about 65% of all Irish whiskey sales. Now, this is globally, by the way. Not far behind. Well, far behind, I should say, is Tullamore Dew, which is the second biggest selling, with 1.2 million cases. Now, Tullamore Dew is actually really popular in Eastern Europe. You seem to like that lighter flavour, the light sort of delicate flavour. I'm actually going to pour myself a wee drop of this 12-year-old, because I quite like this. It's nice. Give me 2 seconds. So, Tullamore Dew, very popular in the Far East, or Middle East, or Eastern Europe, I should say. After that, Bushmills with sales of 744,900. Then, next up, our old favourite-ish, Proper 12 sold 292,500 cases. It doubled in a year.
So it's come from nowhere. Not a bit of wonder they bought them out. Yeah.
Well, that's it. They doubled it in a year. It's now the 4th best-selling Irish whiskey on the market. Kilbeggan, surprisingly, and at number 5, with 168,000 cases sold. Kilbeggan, which, okay, they've got the might of Beam Suntory selling them, but I'm quite surprised that they were there. Now, in Ireland, this is the figures that I thought were really interesting. With all these new distilleries, with all these new brands, with all these new things, Jameson obviously still massively out in front, selling 225,000 cases. Bushmills in second with 76,000 cases. Powers, with their lovely new logo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Powers on 74,000, so just behind them. And then Paddy at 48,000, and Tullamore Dew way down with 16.
You never see Paddy around here much in the office, do you? Really?
Not really. Well, it's there, but it's just one of those things. It's not really as noticeable. But it's interesting, with all the new distilleries, domestically, it's still the old favourites in Ireland. They're still holding strong. And that's with the pubs being closed. With the pubs being closed, there's still people at home. That's obviously where they're having a drink, and they're still sticking with their old popular brands, the old favourites, classics.
There you go. Anthony Sillett's on again tonight. I think you were checking. Did he get your email or something like that? There was it. Yeah.
It was about I still have a couple of them, by the way. If anybody's interested, I don't have many, but I think 2 or 3 of the old 1960s bottles of Johnny Walker Red Label. If anybody's wanting them, give me a shout. Just send me a message or email, or there's loads of ways of getting in contact with me. I'm not hard to find. Now, I like this. This is a good one.
I have never seen this shite in my life.
No, don't you? You're not allowed to curse on that show. If I'm not allowed to curse, you're not allowed to curse.
But shite isn't a curse word.
The Piggy Blinders. The Piggy Blinders. A judge in the US has ruled that the company that produces the TV series Piggy Blinders can't block a company who's selling an Irish whiskey from using the name. This is the Piggy Blinders whiskey.
Right. Okay.
Now, because he says that now hang on, the US judge Consuelo Marshall, I think I'm pronouncing that right, rejected Karen Mandabach Productions' application for an injunction against Sadler's Brewhouse. Make this. Marshall ruled that the producers did not show it owns a protectable trademark in that area. Trademarking is very funny because it's you can only impinge on trademark if you don't own trademarks across a whole lot of stuff. If you use it for something that it's not going to be confused with, then it's a bit more of a grey area.
So what they're saying is that's TV and that's alcohol. They're separable. Yeah.
Sadler's Brewhouse said it was using the name from the old historical gang from Birmingham, because not a lot of people know that the Peaky Blinders were actually a gang. Now we've some pictures of them. We've got a picture of Cillian Murphy, I believe, Justin.
Don't like him either. That's why I don't watch the show.
Well, you have to say he's a handsome chap. Okay, there's lots of women and men watching Peaky Blinders, maybe just for a bit of a perv. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Now, but what are you
trying to say? I'm not handsome.
Moving on swiftly. Let's have a look at what some of the real Peaky Blinders look like.
They look like criminal underworld types.
They do. And then there's another guy. He was in the Peaky Blinders as well.
I'll show him. Yeah, here he is.
He's not. I don't think that's the character that Cillian Murphy's portraying in the show, if I'm honest, because there's not a huge similarity between the two.
Oh boy!
But so because Peaky Blinders were a historical group or gang, the judge said that that Sadler's could use it. Now Sadler's sourced this from the Great Northern Distillery. I've had this for a while. There's not a lot out of it, which probably tells you as much as you would need to know about it.
Here, listen, I'm being told I'm being called a Karen. It's always a Karen to complain. There you go. Yeah. And John McDougall is saying, Cillian is the business. Leave it out. Oh, boy.
No. So,
Gangs of New York, I watched it and I thought, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It nearly put me off going to New York. And yeah, it was terrible.
There was lots to dislike about it. But Liam Neeson's in it from my beloved Ballymena. So
but it's a true story, by the way. It's a true story.
Don't me tell you the truth. It's basically the sort of trouble in Northern Ireland transplanted into New York, because a lot of people don't realise before the sort of massive influx in the 19th century of Irish immigration, lots of Irish immigrants had went, but it was basically the Protestants had went over, and there was lots of Orange Lodges and stuff in New York. So it was basically that conflict, albeit lots of different nuances to it. But that's essentially what happened over there.
I knew you would get the blame somewhere.
Well, we always get the blame, Justin. We'll always get the blame. But it's always us fighting. Now,
I know.
Sadler's Brewhouse, by the way, is owned by Halewood and sources its spirit from the Great Northern. Now, they've actually built a distillery in Birmingham, so don't be surprised if in the over a period of time they'll drop the Irish from this, and well, don't be worrying about buying a bottle of this. If I'm totally honest, it's okay. It's cheap and cheerful.
Is it better than proper 12?
Yes, yes. That's not a big ask of it, Justin. To be honest.
All right. So we're going a bit further south.
We're going over to the west of Ireland and
some other troublemakers.
The Connaught Distillery. They have announced this is what their first release bottle is going to look like. So they've announced that those who bought into their first cask program, bring it up just let everybody see it.
Yeah.
So this is an image of their first bottle, and the 24th of June sees the first cask turning 5 years old. And then, as I quote from an email that sent out, the fun process of bottling, labelling, and shipping can start. The first cask is made from 100% malted barley from the Hookhead Peninsula, double distilled, aged in ex-bourbon, and finished in Oloroso sherry butts from the Bodega Fernando de Castilla in Jerez. 43% non-chill filtered. I think that looks pretty classic design.
It does, but I had spelled Connacht wrong.
Did you? I didn't see it. I never looked.
Yeah,
did I not tell you how to spell it? No.
You did tell me how to spell, but they must be spelling it in Irish rather than Ulster Scots Gaelic, because it was ACHT. There was no U or G in it.
There's no UG. It's CONNACHT.
Well, maybe I spelled it wrong then. Okay.
No,
Errors admission accepted. If you're watching tonight in Connacht, sorry about that.
To anyone who doesn't know, Ireland has 4 provinces. So you have Ulster up in the north, where me and Justin are, Ulster, Leinster, where Dublin is, Munster down the bottom, and Connacht over on the west. So that's where the name comes from. For anybody watching in the States.
And it's a bit like the signs of the zodiac. There was 13, but there used to be a 5th, but we don't talk about it.
that was only a wee bit in the middle, where a wee bit in dead centre, where the Kings of Ireland.
They got done over years ago, so don't worry about it. Now, where are we heading tonight? Somewhere else nice.
We're going to head to the grand old US of A. Now,
I like the price of that bottle.
Aye, Costco in America, which is probably something akin to like a Tesco's. It's like an IKEA for food. It's the 5th largest retailer in the world, and it's sort of one of these pack them high and sell them cheap. They don't talk about shops or stores; they talk about warehouses.
Mm-hmm.
And so what they do is they're known for sort of selling stuff affordably priced, is probably the best way of putting it. So kind of Tesco's. Now they've brought out this. They're selling and this is in a store in Washington, a $30,000 bottle of Balvenie in this one's shop. Now, this is 50-year-old Balvenie. Okay. Now this was reported on Reddit that somebody had seen this. So if you can imagine, what are you laughing at? Because I keep hearing you go running through comments.
Sorry, people are commenting saying about my spelling. It's a hard C, and I spell it the English way, and all the rest of it. And I can't say what Connor said about me. But anyway, there you go.
No, I can't see it. Now, getting back to the story. So Reddit reported that this $30,000 bottle of whiskey is basically being sold in stores, kind of Tesco's over here. Now, it seems very strange, but it's not the first time that Costco have done this. A few years ago in Arizona, 2013, Costco in Arizona sold a 60-year-old bottle of Macallan. Bring it up.
There we go. Yeah.
Bring it up full screen.
I'll bring it even bigger. There you go.
Now, they sold this for $17,000, which at 2013 caused much consternation and lots of people scratching their head thinking who would pay that for it. That's a 60-year-old Macallan in a Lalique glass decanter. Now, at the time, it would have seemed very expensive, but the last bottle of this one of the last bottles of this to be sold on Whisky Auctioneer sold for, bring it up, 68,500 quid. Yeah. Or to put that into context, that's $97,000. So in 8 years, you'd have made $80,000.
That's a lot of do-re-mi.
It's an awful lot of do-re-mi. An awful lot.
What would you have done if you'd have opened it or dropped it?
Been as sick as a pig, probably.
Yeah.
No. So we've done this before when we talked about people investing in whiskies and stuff. And people always say, "Oh, it's there for drinking. It's there for drinking." You would be a very sick guy.
Connor thinks that's a very ugly bottle. I quite like that bottle because it looks like the European Union flag there, doesn't it?
No, well, I'd be honest with you. I'm not out of the Macallan, the Lake bottles. I think that's probably the ugliest one of a lot of them. Not that I've handled them and had them in the house. I don't have that kind of money like you, Justin. But I don't think it's the best out of that range. But if I had it, it would be I would be heading out the door. That would be going on the auction, I would think. But I mean, whiskey. We talked about this before. Whiskey has been outperforming art, classic cars, jewels, and stuff in terms of appreciation. And fine and rare whiskies, as they're known about, in the last 10 years have went up 400 and something %.
Right, nearly as good as Bitcoin then.
Justin, I have still no idea what Bitcoin is. I've tried to look at it, and it's just made up. I think it's Mickey Mouse. Anyway, that's me being a Luddite, I suppose.
All right. So that's more or less the wrap on the news for this week, isn't it?
That's us wrapped up in the news this week. During the week, Justin and I caught up with an interesting guy from Hankaku Spirits. Now, he's an American guy. They're based in... The company's in New York, but they're based in Japan. And what they've done is they have resurrected a process where it's a much more efficient way of fermenting barley. And it's not malted barley. They take raw barley, and it's something akin to how they make sake. It's the Takamine process. And we interviewed him. We recorded the interview. And Justin, if you want to play it up.
Here we go. This boy, William Adams, hasn't aged in 400 years. Marty, how did you manage to do that?
It's through the power of whiskey, Justin. I keep telling you, whiskey makes things immortal. It doesn't go off. It doesn't age. It's just a wonderful product. Wonderful. It's the water of life, Justin. The water of life.
Stephen, what was it like working with James Clavell?
That's a excellent question. Unfortunately, I never had the opportunity.
No, you aren't really. You're a Japanese whiskey guru.
A little bit of all Japanese spirits, I guess.
We're joined by Stephen Lyman of Honkaku Spirits in Japan. The reason he was flagged up to me is because they've brought out a new whiskey which has been award winning, and it's in a totally, well, it's not new. It's reviving a very brief experiment from a long time ago. Stephen, could you explain what I'm on about? Because I don't really know what I'm on about.
You don't know, Marty? That's incredible.
Yeah, so in the late 1800s, the Illinois Whiskey Trust had licensed a proprietary whiskey making method from a Japanese chemist who was living in Chicago at the time. And it was a maltless whiskey that was being made. And they were doing experiments. There was a mysterious fire in the building that was housing the experiments. Never explained.
By mysterious, do you mean arson?
Could have been. Could have been, potentially. I mean, apparently the accelerants that were used in the fire just absolutely gutted the room where the experiments were taking place, and the rest of the building was relatively untouched
by some miracle.
That's right. And so they did rebuild. They finished their experiments. They actually started production in 1894 at the Manhattan Distillery in Peoria, Illinois. Unfortunately, within 3 or 4 months after the production had begun, the distillery itself went into receivership. It was part of a whiskey trust, and this was the era of trust bust in the United States. And so when the new owners of the distillery took over, they decided to return to malted whiskey rather than this new Takamine process.
Now, when you say maltless, just explain why that's important, because everyone's familiar with the term malt whiskey. So what does maltless mean?
Sure. So rather than using malted grains, which you would use in a malted whiskey, the grains are actually steamed and propagated with koji spores. So koji is a mold. It's actually the national mold of Japan.
I love that. I love the fact that Japan has a national mold.
Is this like your cult flavored whiskey?
I don't think so. The mold actually, it's not too much to say that there would not be Japanese cuisine as we know it without koji.
Yeah.
Soy sauce, miso, mirin, sake, these are all made from koji.
Yeah.
And so this Japanese chemist had actually, his mother was from a sake making family. So he had learned how to ferment rice to make alcohol. Obviously also a grain, but the difference in the way that the koji process works is you polish the grains and then you propagate the koji on the steamed grain. And the koji actually sacrifices the grain. So it breaks the starches into simple sugars so that the yeast can then convert those sugars to alcohol. So
it acts as a diastase, basically.
That's right.
Now, I know this is quite complex chemistry, but it's breaking down it's breaking down into the alcohol, but the yeast comes on as well. So they work in tandem with each other.
That's right. It's a multiple parallel fermentation. So you have the koji working at the same time to break down the starches as the yeast is converting the sugars to alcohol. It's happening in the same fermentation.
Now, when you look at the stats for this, now it takes a long fermentation. Normally a fermentation in whiskey is between sort of 2 and 4 days. And at the end of it, you end up with your ABV is sort of 7 to 10, sort of maximum. The koji and the yeast working sort of side by side creates something totally different from that.
That's right. That's right. Typically, the fermentations it's actually a two-stage fermentation. The first fermentation, what we usually refer to as the primary fermentation, is 100% koji inoculated grain. And then you will actually add steamed grain to the second fermentation without inoculating any more koji, because the koji will still be active in the fermentation and will start to break down the new grain. And you're basically feeding it again. You're giving it a new food source to continue the process. And the whole thing can take 2 to 3 weeks, depending on which style is being made.
So it's up to 3 week fermentation. Now, at the end of this, your wort that's running off, instead of it being 7 to 10%,
it's 18 to 19%.
I mean, that's basically what most distillers get after they do their first run. That's basically the ABV of a low wines. So you're getting that prior to actually distilling. You're 20% almost already.
That's right.
Now your process that you take after that, you double distill.
That's right. It's a little bit strange, and it has everything to do with Japanese regulatory standards. But that 19% alcohol fermentation is single distilled in a pot still, and then that, which is about 45% alcohol, is diluted back down to 20% with spring water.
Okay.
To get it, and then it's redistilled. Then it's
redistilled,
and then it's back up to approximately 45% alcohol, and that's when it's casked. That's when it's put in the barrel.
It's a very strange process for what we are looking at. But I mean, the Takamine process, there's other people have used this to make other spirits, and they're reaching, after double distillation, in the high 80%. It seems a very efficient way of converting your grain to alcohol.
That's right. It's, I believe, 2 to 3 times more efficient to use koji to saccharify grains rather than malting. When one of these fermentations is finished, it's essentially liquefied. The grains are liquefied. You don't have any residual grain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
you're basically extracting as much of the sugar as you can. That's right.
Yeah, everything goes. Now, Takamine himself, he came from, as you say, a sake background, so he understood fermentation, which more and more, I think lots of people are beginning to realize that fermentation is really the key to all your flavors, because that's where all your flavors created. Everything else is really just additional and addition and subtraction. But he understood fermentation, and he went to the US to do this experiment. Now, I do love the fact that it's called the Manhattan Distillery, but it's based in Illinois. A little
That's
bit
right.
of marketing. But he went to the US, and tell me a bit about Takamine, because he's a very interesting character.
He is. He was actually the son of a samurai physician, and
So he was busy.
and his mother came from the sake making family. Now, when he was a child, the entire old system of government was ended. So his father lost his status as a samurai. Fortunately, because he was a physician, he could continue to make a living for the family. Well, a lot of samurai couldn't. But Takamine ended up becoming very well educated. He was one of the first graduates of the engineering college at Tokyo University, which today is considered by many people to be the best university in Asia. Mm-hmm. And he ended up working for the government, as a lot of the bright young Japanese were doing at the time. And he was sent on a trade mission to America to go to the New Orleans World's Fair in 1884. And while there, he met and fell in love with an American woman. And he then had to come back to Japan. He had his responsibilities. And what he realized is, if I want this dream of marrying this woman and having a life with her, I really need to become financially independent. And he ended up starting a company to make fertilizer.
Yeah.
And then his mother-in-law, actually, apparently his in-laws really approved of the marriage. And they can, so much so, after the couple got married and moved back to Japan, within 3 years, they were back in the States. Yeah. They had been coaxed back to the US by the in-laws, who saw the financial potential of this young man because he was so talented as an engineer and as a chemist. And he ended up, he had all sorts of patents. And they're all, a lot of them are around koji. He actually made a stomach aid, a digestive aid, because koji creates amylase and protease. And so it breaks down both proteins and carbohydrates. So if you're a little upset stomach, you took one of these pills and you'd feel a little bit better.
It sounds a bit like milk of magnesia, which was invented in Belfast.
There'd be blue bottles. That was invented in Belfast. But no, he was the first person to isolate adrenaline.
That's right. That was his biggest contribution to really the world. Yeah. I mean, adrenaline is a hugely important medical treatment even today. It saved countless lives.
Absolutely.
And it was actually the first time that a hormone had been isolated, that a pure hormone had been isolated in the history of medicine. Yeah. So he also paved the way for all of the future scientists and physicians who learned how to do that.
Yeah. I mean,
so
he was a remarkable man. He was a remarkable man. He one of his big things, obviously done a bit of background for this. He really wanted to foster Japanese-American relations, probably on the same personal level. He wanted to make it a national thing. And the cherry blossom trees in Washington, D.C. are world famous. You know, you see pictures of them all the time and various things. And he was instrumental in getting those planted.
That's right. He actually made that donation. He didn't want to do it directly as a private citizen, so he worked through the Japanese embassy, but those actually were financed by him and some of his pals in the Nippon Club, which is a private gentleman's club in Manhattan. Actually, the Manhattan, New York City, which he had moved to.
Not the fake Manhattan that he set up in Illinois.
That's right.
But he was so well respected that the Japanese emperor essentially gave him a palace.
Well, he did. Actually, that's right. So the St. Louis World's Fair, they had a pavilion, and there was this gorgeous, traditionally made Japanese, essentially summer palace that was part of the Japanese pavilion. And when the St. Louis World's Fair ended, that was gifted to Jokichi Takamine, and he moved it to upstate New York, which it still exists today.
Wow. So there's a Japanese palace in New York from a guy who basically made fungus and the alcohol. That's a great
right.
story. It's a great story. It's fabulous.
Now, what do you think of that there then? That is just a taster of what's to come, because the full interview is out on Anchor and all the places you get your podcast as well.
Yeah, we've got the podcast coming up, the full interview. It's a fascinating story in many ways. And with all the new resurrection stuff that's been going on, we'll be talking a bit more about that in a minute, but all the new rebranding and bringing up new stuff, this Takamine process, it's bringing in an element that's not currently used anywhere else in whiskey. I was talking to a guy about this, and he said, is it like a barrel-aged sochu, which is a Japanese spirit? And it's not. It's a different thing altogether. We're told that it's got an umami flavor, so it's got that sort of savory flavor. There is a big push. I actually left at one of these little bottles. There's this big push for getting stuff sweeter and sweeter, and I'm moving away from this. That's a perfect example of it. Just move away to things getting sweeter, but moving back to having that umami flavor, sort of quintessentially Japanese, where you've got the soy. Now they're sending Justin and I over a couple of little bottles of it to sample. It's one of the ones that I'm actually really, really excited about trying, because it's totally different. Totally different.
You were excited about trying another thing this week as well.
I was, Justin. I was. Last week we had two of the best guys on that we've had for a long time. It's certainly Fanon. He's just his knowledge is astonishing. And Mark, I was talking to Mark after the show, and he was telling me blah blah blah, and suddenly it's the new Old Cumber was released on the back of the show, not the back of our show, I have to say, but the back of Whisky Talking, or Whisky Talking if you were going to be talking in Ulster Scots. And it was released on Monday. Now, they're very limited. There was only a few sold on at the start of the week, and I managed to get my hands on one. And we got to speak with Jarlath, our friend of the show and all-round top spud that he is, during the week. Now, this interview lasted a little bit longer than the other one, but we'll talk about this after the interview with Jarlath. He'll fill us in exactly why this was released and so on. And so on.
I gotta say this first. Connor says, "You lucky." Oh boy! I'm gonna hit play. I'm gonna hit play. Oh no! Hold on, back to the start. Oh, go back to the start for me. There we go.
It comes down to.
I love this time of year, Marty. Early May to July. Cumber Earlies are out. It's fantastic. A noble butter. Oh, they're delicious. They're absolutely delicious.
Justin, they are a PGA product in Northern Ireland. They are one of the very few. But Cumber has another secret, Justin, and it's got a new secret. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
You have the bottle. You have the bottle from Whisky Talking. You have the bottle there with you.
I got mine.
Get that bottle.
VIP. There was a limo stopped up outside my house today, Justin. And funny, he said he stopped at Carrick to drop off your bottle, but missed it and just drove up and left me off.
All right.
Ah, well, here we go. Jarlath, how are you, my friend?
Marty, Justin, yeah, all good. Busy wee week, as you'd imagine. But yeah, all good. Yeah, the Cumber Earlies just aren't it's without a fresh herring and a bit of butter. That's down our way. It's Cumber Earlies, fresh herring, bit of butter. It's always about first or second cut silage time. That comes in, and if someone's here, that's your diet for about 3 months. I love it.
For anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about there, Cumber Earlies are a type of potato that are grown in Cumber, which is in County Down, the county below County Antrim, where I am, where me and Justin are, just below that. And they're a protected geographical indication they can only be grown in Comber. But you've done it again, the guys down at Ecklandville. Not content with resurrecting the old legendary Dunville's brand, you've decided you're going to do the old Comber as well. So, how did that come about?
I'm not too sure. How did it come out? We worked with Fionnán O'Connor and the society. God, two years ago maybe. Fionnán was up in Prony, the Public Records Office in Belfast.
Knee deep in books.
Knee deep, as Fionnán does. Fionnán O'Connor does. He's a historian of Irish whiskey.
You had him on last week.
Yeah, you did. Interesting guy, can talk.
Oh, he's brilliant.
Fionnán phoned me, like, just super excited, bursting down the phone. Jarlath, where are you? I says, I'm in the Duke of York. I was actually there with the guys from Dick Mac's pub. We're up. I says, right, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I've got someone. And Fionnán arrived with just, bursting with excitement, the original Old Comber mash bill. He was up trying to actually get a lot of information on Dunville's and Old Comber and different, obviously, northern distilleries. I think he struggled with Dunville's a lot more because it was all very, high-end stuff.
Corporate stuff.
Yeah, whereas Old Comber, you get into the workrooms, actually got the mash bills and the diapers, which is where the real meat is. And Peter White and Finn from Dick Mac were there, and Fionnán, and I think maybe Sergio was there, I'm not too sure, from Irish Whiskey Mag. And lo and behold, it's not just the Old Comber mash bill, but it's also temperature, cut points, cask finish information, cask purchase information. And we go, do you fancy doing this? And I'm like, do I? We're literally 10 miles away from Comber. It's our local, even more than Dunville's, it's our local distillery. We just jumped at the idea. We were double distilling pot still anyway. In honor of Old Comber and County Down, we were doing that as a matter of course in our distillery. But to do it with the Old Comber mash. So, long story short, we laid down the Old Comber mash bill and have been doing limited runs of that ever since, with an idea that, hey, do you know what? In 7 years' time, we'll put out an Ecklandville Old Comber mash bill release.
Yeah.
And I suppose the more we've done it, and the more we, the more we work with Old Comber, and the more you said it about the place, it just started to sound right.
Yeah.
And obviously Shane being a lover of old brands and what he does, and Mark Thompson, who does our branding, being a lover of old brands and knowing so much about Old Comber from his research, it just all started to fall into place. And we thought, and then the BBC programme, the Whisky Talk programme that Justin referred to, was coming out, and we featured the Old Comber mash bill story on that, and we were talking about it for a while, and that sort of crystallised. Do you know what? We're going to do it, and we're going to try and do it in line with the programme. And like all good things, you need a deadline, and that was a deadline that sort of got everybody's arse kicked a bit. And in truth, I don't know how we managed to keep it secret, but we managed to keep it completely on the radar.
I must admit, Jarlath, the branding is superb. I mean, it really pays homage to the old stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, funny, you've picked that old label, but there's another old label from the late 1800s that is very similar to the label we put out. It's in the Samuel Bruce time. If you look at our bottle, it has the letters SB.
Yeah.
In the red above Old Comber. Now, most people see that, think that's Shane Braniff.
That's a happy coincidence, all the same.
I looked at it, and for about 5 seconds, I thought that too, until I remembered that Samuel Bruce owned the distillery. He bought it in 1872. He bought Old Comber. Mm-hmm. I think he sold it in 1922, so he had it for 50 years. And during Samuel Bruce's time, he put his initials on the bottle. So you will find that label in old posters and in old mirrors, and you'll find it in the Duke of York, a label very, very similar to that. And as we like to do, even with the Dunville stuff, we like in our first releases to be very, very true to the old branding.
It's one of the things I've complimented on you many times, the fact that you do stick to the labels, that okay, obviously you change them a little bit, but you do stick to them. And
then as time goes on, we can put our own twist to it, but not until we believe that we have made a mark on the brand, and at that point we'll put our own twist to it. Like 1808, but the first Dunville releases was the VR and the Three Crowns were very, very much paying homage to the old brands. And again, that's what we've done. Mark and Shane, Mark, our designer, Mark Thompson, who was on the Whisky Talking program, and Shane were just in their element with this for the last 3 months. They actually kept it from me. I didn't see it until like 3 or 4 days before it went to print, By that time, I can't say like about it. It's too late, but no, I absolutely love it. It's got an old world feel to it. It captures Old Cumber perfectly, and I think it actually captures what's in the bottle perfectly. So, I mean, I just couldn't be happier with what Shane and Mark have done. Shane and Mark do it well. In fairness, they do that very well.
Well, put it like this, I've complimented you many times on the attention to detail on the bottle. So I really do. I think they just look fabulous. To do it on something so local to us as Old Cumber, yourself, like guys. I mean, Old Cumber is held in high, maybe even more than Dunville's. Dunville's is a far bigger brand and a far bigger animal, but Old Cumber is held in. Old Cumber's in sacred territory almost. I guess there's still living memory of Old Cumber didn't close till the mid 1950s. Yeah.
So I think that's still in living memory, and certainly about the Ards Peninsula, where we are, it's 10 miles from Cumber, and we know it very well, and it's still in living memory. So I mean, it is held. It was almost tread carefully with Old Cumber, and do it justice and be loyal to what the brand is. But we've seen that in the reaction in the last week. I mean, it's just been off the chart.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we keep saying this. There's a reason people take whiskey more seriously than they take the likes of vodka. And there's a reason for it, and it is the history and the heritage. I get challenged a few weeks ago about, you just love whiskey. You love whiskey. Yeah, yes, I do, but I love it for many, many more reasons than having a drink. I love it because I like the history. I like the design labels. I like the stories behind it. And that's a vehicle for things. And that's why bringing back some of these, the way you guys do it, I genuinely appreciate, because you always see yourselves as custodians of the brands. Yeah. Not just cashing in on it.
Well, I mean, it's very much, these brands will be about long after I'm in the ground, and Shane's in the ground, and if we can leave them in a better place than we got them, that's really as much as we can do, and in 50 years' time, if somebody refers to Shane in the same way as they refer to Samuel Bruce or to the Dunville family, if they're mentioned in the same sentence, well then, that's our job done, really, because we've made an indelible mark on the brand.
Is this the most accurate recreation of an old whiskey that's ever been done with this mash bill investigation?
Yes, probably yes and no, Justin. What's in the bottle at the minute is not the old mash bill. Right. Because we only done that 2 years ago, and what's in the bottle there's just about 5 years old. So what's in the bottle is predominantly, and I'll use the word predominantly, and you take your own interpretation of that. It's predominantly double distilled pot still from our distillery, and I mean predominantly as in the sort of highly predominantly. Yeah. And we could have went out. We could have went down the source whiskey route, but Old Cumber, like I say, I mean, it is tread very carefully. Old Cumber is revered for double distilled pot still whiskey.
Heavy bodied.
Yeah, you don't mention. Sorry, Martin.
Heavy-bodied, oily pot still whiskey.
It's that. It's exactly that. And to go and put a triple distilled from anywhere else just would not. It wouldn't have been true to the brand. It would not have done the brand justice. So we decided to open our warehouses, took out our double distilled pot still from Macallan, and put predominantly that whiskey into it. Now it is a pot still blend, and there's amounts of other pot still in there. Yeah, but it's predominantly double distilled County Down Macallan whiskey.
Is port cask finished?
It's port cask finished. We also have some in sherry, and if you go back through the Dunville state,
don't be opening it. It's worth a fortune. Don't be opening it. What are you doing? What are you doing?
I got one bottle and it's open. I didn't even get 2 bottles. I got 1 bottle and it's open. So I mean, it's so those historic mash bills, Justin, will come on stream in 5 years' time. Our aim is to get this to a 7-year pot still, and possibly even a 7 and 10 year, and some single cask releases also. But obviously, we're only at, even our own spirit is only at 5 years currently. So what we're going to have for the next 2 years is a work in progress until we get to that 7-year mark, and we'll have a core release. So for the next 2 years, you're going to see limited releases at 46%, possibly 1 or 2 limited single cask releases. Go back to the Dunville's Daybirds, Marty, as well as knowing the cut points and the distillation techniques to distill that Old Cumber mash bill and the mash bill itself. We also know that their purchasing records would show that the barrels they were purchasing, the cask they were purchasing, range from 2/3 port, 1/3 sherry to 2/3 sherry to port. So we know it was approximately 50-50 port and sherry was what the cask they were using for 100 years. So again, we're laying this spirit down in port and sherry casks, and we're going to play about with those casks before the next release. But for this release, it was only in a fresh report cask.
Now this, in terms of mash bill, this is malted and unmalted barley. There's no other grain in this, is there?
It is about 65 to 70% malted barley. The balance being malted barley. There's no rye, oats, or wheat in there. In the Old Cumber mash bill, you'll have 17 to 23% oats, both malted and unmalted. We play about with both. The records don't tell us if they're malted or unmalted, so we do both just to be sure to be sure. But yeah, so it's for what you're tasting, the work in progress. I wish that I'm very pleased with it. For what it is, I'm exceptionally pleased with it. I think it embodies the spirit of Old Cumber in there. I firmly believe that it's just, it will get better, and it will get more true to the brand. But for what's there, I'm absolutely delighted with it.
I had to zoom in on that. What does it taste like?
It's lovely. It's really nice. It's nice and sweet. It's getting a nice peppery pot still spice to it. It has a nice oily rich, and it's finishing. It's still finishing. It's finishing really well.
That creamy. And it's double distilled pot still, so there's a load of viscosity in there, and that creaminess just carries the spice right the way through.
It's funny because it's got a nice sort of. It's nice. Got almost like a chili burn to it, but it's pleasant. It's got that pleasant. It's not fiery. It's got a nice sort of burn, mellowing warmth to it. Yeah,
we did play about with it at a higher ABV, but putting it into 46 was just where the spice was right. For flavor notes, we sat on Monday to write flavor notes for this, to write the tasting notes. Stephen Graham and myself, and it was all over the place. There's so much going on there. There's that creamy part. I get the sort of almond cake, like a Battenberg cake. There's definitely the toffee. It's a toffee, for me, it's a toffee off a toffee apple type idea.
I could get that. For me, there's a like a Victoria sponge note to it.
There is, yeah. And like I said, there's a medium spice there that just carries straight into a long finish. It almost turns like after you get this sort of Battenberg cake and the toffee apples, and it almost turns to me to like a raspberries and cream come through from the port cask, almost like a good eating mess or a good pavlova, type flavor.
Justin knows all about eating messes and pavlova. Don't worry about that.
Listen, I love pavlova, but I hate eating mess. I do hate eating mess. Honestly, I don't like it. It ruins a good pavlova. We're breaking it all up.
Well, I'm not saying this is pavlova, not eating mess. And you know what? We could have waited another 6 months or a year to put this out. We had to. There was sort of, we wanted to get it out in line with it. Ultimately, it comes down to the liquid, and the liquid for us, for Graham, myself, and Stephen and Shane, it was ready. And like I say, you will see a progression, and that's good to see that progression too. We've seen it with Dingle, and we've seen it with Tilling, and you'll start to see it with us through Old Cumber and different stuff, But just nice to have some juice out there,
It is. It's always nice to have something new to talk about, Justin.
Yeah, it is. But compared then to the Old Cumber, Marty, and I don't know if many are aware, the direct link, we now have Dunvilles and we're doing Old Cumber in our stable. The direct link between those two is the Briss family. So Samuel Briss, whose initials are on the bottle, Bought Old Comber in 1872, owned it for 50 years. His brother, James Bruce, was the director of Dunville's. Was the director of Earlies. So you had that direct family link, that one brother was running Cumber, one brother was running, or was on the board of directors of Dunville. So it's that's the family link that now, that we're going to now maybe try.
It was nearly a conglomerate before conglomerates existed. Is that what you're saying, Jarlath?
The Irish whiskey industry was a sort of small big industry, but the network was small, So yeah, that's the family link between Old Cumber and Dunville's that we maybe try and play on through our distillery in future years. But it's nice, that was a nice story to find.
We're not going to talk to you for too much longer because I know you're busy doing lots of talks this week. With what you're doing for Dunville's, is Old Cumber going to be your release for Ecklenville pot still? Is that going forward? Will all your pot still be released under Old Cumber, or can we expect an Ecklenville pot still?
That sort of assumes that we have a plan for this. I'm not too sure that we have a plan yet. There's a double distilled. We do double distilled pot still and triple distilled pot still in Ecklenville, as you know.
Yeah.
I really don't know that yet. I don't know what Old Cumber will be as it matures as a brand. I know that we only have a limited amount of double distilled pot still in the company in our warehouses, and if we want to grow Old Cumber as a brand, we might have to go beyond that. But at the same time, whatever we do, the response to this in the last 3 days has been off the chart. We launched Dunville 7 years ago to a muted, response. 7 years later, we're launching Old Cumber, and it's been off the chart. I think a lot of that is to do with where Irish whiskey is now. A lot of that's also to do with the fact that Old Cumber is living memory. I hope that a small part of it is to do with the fact that people will trust us with Old Cumber, because we've shown what we've done with Dunville, and they'll trust us with it. And it is important for us that whatever we do with it, whatever way we go with it, it will be true to the history, and that will always involve as much double distilled pot still from our place as we can put into it.
Now, this sold out very quickly because I know there was a very limited run on this. When can give us an idea of when they can expect to see Old Cumber supplied again? What
happened there was we wanted to put it out to tie in with the Whisky Talk program with BBC Two on last Sunday, but our labels didn't arrive in time, so we had to go and get a run of digital labels printed, 60, 70, 80, and we put those out. The rest of the batch, which could be another 300-ish bottles, I would expect to go out in 2 to 3 weeks' time, whenever the labels arrive. Obviously, that won't go very far either. And then we hope to have another release of maybe 3 casks worth, maybe 1,000 each bottles before Christmas.
Okay.
And then we're going to just work on channeling through, start to it. But for the next 2 to 3 years, unless we go down and do a mainstream release of a blend of whatever, the double distilled pot still releases will be for the next 2 or 3 years until we get to that 7-year mark. They will be staggered releases. We might play about and do 1 or 2 at cask strength as it gets older and works, but at the minute it works at the 46. And we'd always put liquid out at where it works. I'm not a proponent of putting it out at cask strength and letting people find their mark. I like to bring it down to where Graham, myself, Steve, and Shane think it works.
Yeah.
If we're wrong, we're wrong, but I don't. So that's what we'll do. So you'll see different batches from out over the next 2 to 3 years until we get to that sort of. At the minute, the plan is to get to a 7-year core release, but again, these plans change.
As we say, I suggest there's a plan, an overall arcing plan. So it's not. I might say it's slightly jam donut. It's like a jam donut now.
And, rub it in, why don't you? Rub it in. There
is like almonds and wee nice touch of spice in it, Justin.
I think, Justin, that Marty got his bottles directed to his house and they went not right with you at all.
No, but like Justin's too busy talking on the phone, and the wee man stood banging at the door. Justin. Hey, Jarlath, we'll let you go, mate. It's always a pleasure, and I'll speak to you again.
Always a
Speak to you
pleasure.
soon.
Yeah, anytime. Enjoy that, Marty. Justin, thanks very
Right,
much. And yeah, well, hopefully next time we can actually sit in a proper bar over a whiskey and do this properly. You know. So,
Exactly.
Yeah, we love
Exactly.
it. Right.
Justin's actually got a drop. I delivered a drop to Justin today.
I have been sniffing this for 20 minutes. 20 minutes.
And that's, do you want me to tell you the truth? That's really what you should do with good quality spirit. Now, do you know the best thing about this? The best thing about it, right? It's not that there's a revival of, new whiskies out and everybody gets excited and all that kind of stuff. But the best thing about this is when this goes again, it's only going to be a couple of weeks until they have more of this on release. It's at £45 a bottle. It's not going to be a single cast £270 bottle that people can't really afford. This is natural colour. I was just about to do that. I was just seen the thing pop up. Natural colour. Look at it. Look at that colour. Right? For £45 a bottle, pot still Irish whiskey, beautifully presented. Right? Okay. Beautifully presented. Homage to a much loved product. And I was reading some of the comments there, Justin. Right? You're overdoing. You're overdoing it. I was trying to talk to you there all the time. I was like, oh.
I'm not overdoing it. I've tasted it.
Yeah. Now, it's got sweetness, spice, pepper, lots of stuff going on. This is what I did earlier on, right? Because I had a few drops of this earlier on. I was like, what is that? There's something I couldn't get. And I looked at it, and I went and I bought a bit of Madeira cake, okay? A cherry Madeira cake. I thought I'll try this.
Where's my Madeira cake?
I bought you lunch today, you guy.
But I didn't get a dessert.
No. Look, Justin. And I thought, right, is this what I'm getting? And it's not. I'm still missing it. It's still not what I was thinking about. And I'm still missing that exactly what it is. And it's going to bug me. But it's brilliant because it's like that. It's got lots and lots and lots going on. Lots of heat, lots of spice, cloves, some nutmeg, cinnamon coming through on it, and a level of sweetness that's coming on. It's really good. When you get a chance of getting this, and this was a very limited run, I got a heads up from a friend who said it's appeared online, and I managed to get in and get a couple of bottles. Justin has one of them. 300 bottles coming very soon, followed by another 1,000 bottles coming very shortly after that. These will sell out really, really quick. All of those will be going really quick. Now, I was reading some of the comments that come up there. I think it was John said revived the same. It didn't use the old mash bill.
Yeah, John. Yeah, there it is. There. Yeah.
My understanding that was the point. They have used to the point that the original, the mash bills weren't in all of the paperwork. The cut points, the heat, all of the sort of technical stuff was there, but there was certain information was just lost. As Jarlath has said, this is a work in progress. They are going to get us as best they can, but remember, it's a modern product, and these guys are doing fabulous work with Dunvilles. Honestly, I look at some of the after sales market prices, the auction prices that Dunvilles single casks go for, and I'm just like, I wish I had lots of money because I just buy it all, because it's the stuff that they release over and over is fantastic when they're doing the stuff right. Like, what are you getting on that, Justin?
The nose is really superb on it. It is really, really good. I've been trying it off and on all day. It's different every time. It's brilliant to start with, and it gets excellent as you leave it sit, you know?
Yeah. Oh, this could do with being sat for a wee while. I haven't left this out. I'm bringing it more or less straight. The start of it is really, really sweet, and it just sort of moves in, and it's got a really nice viscosity. If I'm honest, being honest about the thing, Jarlath says they want it to be a 7-year-old, and they've released it a little bit on the back of the show, probably for a couple of reasons. There's lots of reasons going on, but I think with a little bit more age to it, it'll get a little bit oilier, and I think this will get better. This will get better than it is now.
There's a really good question from John Dunn. Does the modern taste anything like the old? Have you tasted old Cumber? Have you tasted old Cumber?
Yes, and at the minute it's not, for a whole host of reasons. The old there's the old Cumber you can buy at 30 years old. Don't bother. I mean, you can see them; they pop up at auction all the time.
Actually, the price varies on them greatly, doesn't it? It's weird that.
Yeah, you can pick up a bottle of them sometimes for about 200-300 quid, and then it's 700 quid. Don't bother. The 30-year-old stuff is awful, but it was never meant to be the guy. It was just sat in a cask far too long. The other stuff, it's very oily and a deeper flavour. But I think that comes necessarily from the barley, and there's lots of parameters. But as Jarlath says, and the guys at Ecklandville are genuinely serious about this. When you talk to them, they are passionate about this, that they want to get these brands and work with them and get them as good as possible. Not necessarily a carbon copy of what was before, because that's not really what people necessarily like these days. But they want to get it as close as possible. Now, Finoan's project is PhD. There's cask laid down as close as possible to the old mash bills of yore, if you like, you know, from days gone by, and that's probably as good as you're going to get at the minute. Going forward, there'll be works in progress all over the place, but I am personally quite confident that the guys at Ecklandville will do this as much justice as possible.
If you want to find out more about this, Mark Thompson has a great blog, and I'm going to run it through the screen here now. If you want to look at it, it's called "Blogging Burn Ulster Scots Thoughts." It is.
How can you not speak Ulster Scots? How can you not speak it properly?
Listen, I've been a KGB sleeper agent for 50 years. How on earth am I going to speak Ulster Scots now?
It baffles me. You're from County Antrim. You're just up the road, and you cannot speak Ulster Scots.
I cannot. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to start reading books like Robert Huddleston, The Bard of Money Ray?
Yes. Learn your proper tongue, the Hamley tongue. Bring up a poem, because Jarlath and Mark.
Have I got to read the poem? Have I?
No.
Read the poem.
There's no point in you reading that poem, because you'll just massacre the thing. For anybody who's not sure, Ulster Scots some people say it's a language, other people say it's a dialect, okay, of English. I think it's a mixture of the two, if I'm honest, because it's primarily a dialect of English. But if you hear it being spoken, anyone who isn't familiar with it, it's totally impenetrable. Okay, and Mark, who was on last week and done the Whisky Talking show, he presents Ulster Scots programs on BBC, and that's primarily where the whiskey talking, because whiskey and Ulster Scots and all plays a huge part in the whole story of whiskey. Justin can't speak it, so when I talk, he gets sort of a bit lost in the whole thing. So do you want me to read a wee bit of this?
Read this. Read a wee bit of this. Have a look. There you go.
This is from a book. Hex, there's your pecking. By the speed, it's the ill camp and like going by your atin. Abide ye the patriarchs, I it hay and tak half in a piece. She then poured out the remaining contents of the pot, and reaching for a shelf and handing down a bottle and 2 glasses, she filled them to the brim and said, "It's Gadel Cumber, as ever I've had in my house. Sup it up, it'll warm your veins, and it's made o' barley that grewed in Calenchi. Here's to you, Maggie," said Mr. Campbell. "You'll call the next wean after me." And he winked and said, "You're aye full of fun, Archie," she replied. Reading it's actually a little bit more difficult because you're not used to reading it.
Oh boy!
There's an entire poem to Outcomer. I'm not going to start and read out the whole poem, but
I'm going to do. Shall I do the poem?
Oh God, this will be good.
I can't. The writing's too small on the screen. Bring us a naggin the next is chill. They're full as the hair that got so well. I won't do it. I don't want to get a letter from Edwin Putz. Don't want to get a letter.
No. But no, it's great that these guys are bringing.
John McDougall says, in fairness, that wasn't great.
You guys, these are lethal.
I know.
Bad. But no, it's great that Old Cumber's back again. There's going to be more releases of this. There's probably going to be about 1,300 bottles of it out very, very shortly for the next couple of weeks. And yeah, get yourselves a bottle because you'll enjoy it. It's different than pretty much every other Irish whiskey out there at the minute.
Yes, you took the words right out of my mouth. It is different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is different. And I just think a little bit more age to it. It'll come on. This is a work in progress, and it will come on.
Call it a wrap. Because I've got 3 cases to get through before Monday morning on the radio show.
I don't think so.
I know. I hunted high and low across county down on Thursday. Oh boy. That's it. What do you think of that, folks? Good show tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, the Takamine Hanaku Spirits podcast comes out on Wednesday. A couple of people have been asking about that. A couple of new listeners have been asked about that already. Just ask your smart speaker to play it or look it up from wherever you get your podcasts. It's on Anchor if you want to find it directly. And don't forget, follow us on Facebook. Like us as well on Facebook, share and comment and everything, as many things as possible, and YouTube as well. The show's going to be repeated, bits of it on Instagram and also on LinkedIn as well on Sunday sometime, maybe tonight actually. And that's about it. And what's the show about next week? Do we know yet, Marty? We don't know, do we?
Justin, we don't know what it's about on Friday every week, so I have to get somebody for next week. I don't know what we're doing. We never do.
I know it gets better every week. Trevor Watson's asking for a score out of 10.
No, he's asking for a score out of 1.
No, he's just asking for a score out of 10.
We'll do a review, probably next week on it, and we'll put it up on YouTube, and you can get it there.
I think it's going to be a very hard thing to review because it's virginal. It's virginal and unique. You can't compare it with anything else. There's nothing out there that's like it.
We'll put it like that, Justin. We can always give our opinion.
Can indeed. All right, 9-8 everyone. 9-8.
Bye guys.
Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Was that Ulster Scots?
No, wait your bed.